Councilmember Gabler.
Well, I guess I was hoping the executive branch would further explain what they sent to us over, I don't know, Friday or Saturday, I can't recall, that had an amendment to the original skip bond proposal that moved a lot of the more funding into stormwater.
Thank you, Councilman Gabler. Yes, I'll comment. As council knows, we've been in front of them multiple times to explain the mayor's proposal for the CIP program. And that's the 5-year program, bonding up to $160 million. It's an interim step to address our highest priority needs that include city streets, stormwater, public safety, and then parks. Now, what was born out of a conversation with Councilman Bennett and Councilwoman Gabler was a possible alternative to that plan. And I've got a chart, if we want to put it on the overhead, and I can show you what that discussion looked like. And essentially what it does is it takes our proposed plan, and we had an annual spend of approximately $15 million on neighborhood streets and $8 million on stormwater. That plan would reduce the amount spent on neighborhood streets by $3 million and adding that to stormwater so that it's an $11 million spend. But the proposal beyond that hasn't changed, and that again was just capturing what some of the discussion had been around that proposal. I think we're going to see that now. And you see the initial.
I have hard copies of that. Would you like me to pass them out to you?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, there's 3 sections here, and I'll go to the middle section first, which is what the staff and mayor proposal is for a 5-year spend in those different categories that we've talked about. The discussion that took place as a result of some of the Lower Arkansas Valley concerns as it relates to stormwater was what could we do to get our annual spend up as it relates to stormwater. And you see that breakdown in the top section. That breakdown is all funds. That's not all within the mayor's proposal. So we have a $3 million annual spend that maintains our MS4 permit, and then we have listed the bonding amount that we had talked about in the first proposal was the $8 million, and then we talked about the city applying $3 more million to that out of the neighborhood streets program, and it's a commitment from CSU to spend $3 million annually. And that got us to the $17 million mark, which was equivalent to the annual spend from the now defunct SWENT program. So if we go down to the third line, that chart assumes that adjustment, the reduction in the streets and adding it to stormwater to increase that annual stormwater spend to about $1 million with a 5-year total of $55 million and reducing the 5-year total spend on neighborhood streets to $60 million. So that's it in a nutshell. And President King, we had talked and you had a question about the bonding and having a reserve fund, and is there a requirement to have a reserve fund? Cara has posed that question to our financial advisor, and she would be here tomorrow to address that.
Okay. Okay, is there any other questions about this proposal? This will be up for tomorrow, so. Councilmember Gabler.
Just as far as process is concerned, how will we go about voting tomorrow? Will we vote on the initial packet proposal that the mayor proposed, then this, or how will that work?
I think we need to see if there is probably enough council members that want to see this alternative go forward, so that we would have to change the, David would probably have to do some changing in the language before tomorrow so that we would be able to have that discussion and have an alternative.
If there's a consensus for an alternative change, we can certainly take that up as soon as I get back to the office.
Then can I speak to it just for
Sure.
a moment in the most persuasive of ways? I guess I'm compelled by several things in regard to this. First and foremost, I have heard from so many constituents around so many of these projects. And although I do struggle with the idea of going into debt, this provides a solution that both solves some of our stormwater issues and relationships with Lower Arkansas, while allowing us to complete some very needed projects in parks and, of course, on streets and also stormwater. And I also am compelled by something Cara said that she knows that I have memorized, which is the intergenerational equity of being able to accomplish some things now for generations to come that would not otherwise be able to be funded for many, many years. And I want the community, I want the citizens to be able to have some of the benefits of these projects, whether it is pickleball, whether it's my WPA walls in Monument Valley Park, which I have personally probably received 100 emails on those walls. And that's important to my constituents. So I really support this idea of being able to try to encompass a lot of what we want to do. I'm grateful to the executive branch for modifying the proposal to try to make it more conducive to getting our support, and I would really like us to at least consider voting on this tomorrow.
Okay, other comments? And Councilmember Martin.
You know, when we received this on Saturday from Steve Cox, I actually replied with a separate resolution that has been talked about some over the last few months, which is takes a little bit different direction. It looks at the numbers actually match the same as we're looking here for stormwater, which is the annual enterprise revenue of $17 million. But this plan actually uses the $8 million payment for SCIP and would replace the initial bond proposal that I think is what is listed there in the city's list, and comes to the total of $17 million. And what the resolution that here, I've got some copies I can pass out, that I sent out on Saturday is more of a cash solution, a pay-as-you-go, and does not require bonding. Now, it's important to understand that this is really just a stormwater solution, but this would get us back to where we were with a stormwater enterprise of about $17 million annual payment for stormwater. It's a cash option. We pay as we go rather than to do bonding. And so at the same time, we're talking about what is presented tomorrow. I'd like to add this into the mix and see if this is something council would like to consider tomorrow also.
Okay, great.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Thank you. There's obviously been much discussion about stormwater, and we understand that issue. And we, according to CH2M Hill, we have about $160 million in the highest priority stormwater needs. But I don't believe this resolution does anything to address the other needs that we have in our community. And I think staff, we've gone to great lengths to present over the last several months the need. And respectfully, I would ask council, what are we going to do to address those needs? We've come to you, I think we've done an excellent job of demonstrating the need for those. We have high priority needs. I've used the example of a police substation. We've got, in public safety, we have firefighter, fire department generators. There's this whole host of things. And we're really at the mercy of the council in terms of solving this problem. And we just don't, what's the alternative solution to address these high priority needs? We just haven't seen it. Feels like we've done all the talking on the executive side and all of the proposing of solutions, but we just haven't seen anything come back the other way on how we're going to address this. And I've said this before, I mean, stormwater is important, but the overwhelming majority of complaints that we receive as a city have to do with the condition of our streets and our infrastructure. So we're kind of, that's where we are. We find ourselves at that we're proposing what we think is a good interim step. It's not the permanent solution, but we just haven't received anything back from council in terms of what are the other ideas for solving these issues
Well, I would.
beyond stormwater.
Yeah. Well, I brought forward an idea that was in the last meeting to take a look at how to solve this, and so I was proactive on this particular issue, so there has been some ideas come forward. I did not receive any response from the mayor's office that they wanted to consider that or not consider that, and it was frankly, I think, a measured approach to try and solve the issue. It was reversing the amount of money that we spend on roads and stormwater, and it was cash funding the projects that would be the 30 million. It was cash funding them to the tune of about 18 million, and it was doing it through the savings of not putting up the reserve. So council has come forward with some ideas. I think that was a measured approach. That was a alternative to what has been presented, and so I did present that, but if the mayor's office would have been interested in that, I would have been happy to have continued to pursue that, but I never got any response back, so it was unfortunate if you wanted a different approach and a different way of looking at things that there was no response on that particular issue. So. Councilmember Knight.
Just state my opinion. Several people have asked for feedback, so between the three proposals, Councilmember Martin, I like yours the best because it is a pay-as-you-go. It does not obligate us. The stormwater is a very important issue, and the problem I see with both the bonding is that money disappears in 5 years, and then we're not at 17 anymore, but we are at 9, and we're making payments for 9 more years. Between the two bonding, I say let's bring Councilwoman Gabler and Mr. President Pro Tem Bennett forward, and let's take a vote on them. But I do have concern on them if it was between the mayors and this. Mr. Cox, what he stated a few minutes ago is streets. I go back to one of my very first town halls at Fire Station 18, which is right up at Centennial and Vindicator, in July of 2013. So this was right after the 1 year after Waldo Canyon, 1 month after the Black Forest fire. I got the people that are at the base of Waldo Canyon fire that at that time we thought that's where all the floods were going to happen, and not coming down Fountain Creek, but coming down Monument Creek and the North and South Douglas Creeks. They were still more concerned about roads than they were about stormwater. And they're concerned about our roads. But again, there's up to $900,000 a year that would go into neighborhood street repair, not named projects. But that's only going to be a drop in the bucket, and at the end of the 5 years, that's gone. I think so. Feedback for all of you. Between all three of these, I'd like Councilwoman Martin, so I'd like to see it come forward tomorrow that we can discuss it. Also want to add in that 2 other quick factors. I reached out to all 4, 4 of the 5, if there is a 5th one, or 4 of the mayoral candidates, and they have ideas too. None of them match this perfectly. One candidate wants more citizen involvement. I give the mayor that he has had multiple town halls on there. Another one, and I won't state names, likes the pay-as-you-go. Another one rather do just the bonding for the streets and relook at some sort of tax or fee for stormwater so we have a permanent solution. The thing is, they all have ideas that they're willing to enact in their first 3 months of their administration, be it his or hers, to sit down with council, come up with a joint solution, and move out on PDQ. And so my druthers is actually to wait and let's sit down together and come up with a solution. In that same line, I've received a lot of the same emails that Councilwoman Gabler referred to on the 10 million for the parks, and a lot of support on that. And they highlighted both the pickleball and the Monument Valley Park historical restoration. But if you look at the plan here, the Monument Valley Park historical resolution is 200,000 total, and it doesn't come in until 3 years, year 3 of the 5-year plan. And that, I agree, is a very important part. And I'd be willing to work with Councilwoman Gabler or the rest of the council to try and find some way to either get a grant or bump it in priority of next year's with the new administration. So that, you know, a lot of the emails were on the 10 million on the parks and not the two elephants in the room of stormwater and roads and bridges.
Okay.
If I could just make 2 points.
Sure, go
President. If we go on the cash basis, it's going to take us 14 and a half years to accomplish what we could accomplish in 5. And then also, one other point. Oh, that council is going to be limited in their ability to act unless, because per code, we'd have to wait 2 years until the next municipal election to enact some sort of solution to this, unless we pay for a special election. So realistically, with those confines, you're looking at a couple of years before we take action on a lot of these items. And I just don't believe that we can afford to wait that long.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pico.
Well, I'll note that the funds that would become available from skip bonds don't start exactly this year either. So we're going to have to wait for those couple of years before the funds start rolling.
That's not true.
It's a year and a half, isn't it?
No, that's not true. And our financial advisor, she went over that the other day, and she can go over that tomorrow too. But the way those bonds are paid off and structured, we could really actually start mid-year 15 with projects.
Yeah, but only a smaller amount, right? You're not the full amount of this.
Carl will come up and address that.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Council President King, Council President Pro Tem Bennett, and members of City Council. Cara Skinner, Chief Financial Officer. Yes, we can issue bonds. We could do our first tranche of bonds during mid-2015, assuming it gets to the ballot and we get voter approval. And we can just structure the repayment of those new bonds such that we don't need to make payments in those years, or as large payments in those years that we're still paying off the skip bonds. So we can go ahead, if we have voter approval, and issue some bonds, probably by end of May, early June 2015, have bond proceeds and get moving on projects. And we can just structure the payments around our remaining skip bond payments. So we can get going right away.
Okay, I think I was focusing on the payment schedule rather than the proceeds. Okay.
So, Cara, the payments would be, if we did that, we would not pay on the bonds for, say, 6 months to a year. Is that correct? And so
Correct.
that would increase the interest because we are not making any payments on the bonds during that time?
Sure, and with any bond issuance, you typically make an interest payment 6 months, and then 6 months later, you make a principal and interest payment. And then 6 months later, you make an interest payment, and then 6 months after that, you'll make a principal and interest payment. So that's a typical structure regardless.
Okay. Councilmember Knight.
So from my budget days, I did take a hard look at, if not now, when, and what is the cost of when. If we don't want to incur more than a couple of K or a couple of tens of Ks cost to put this question on a regularly scheduled municipal election, indeed, we are waiting until the first Tuesday of April of 2017. If we do special election, then we're running in the neighborhood of 330K. The election for 6 district members was 323 in April of 2013, and that was with 6 different ballots, but you add in inflation, we're looking in there. So when you're talking about this amount of money, though, and you're already looking at, we're borrowing 160, but we're only getting 145 to spend, or we're borrowing 157, and we're only getting 145 to spend. 330K, an extra 330K out of that loss of money is probably a good expenditure to get it right. Now, we do have a third opportunity, which is the November of 2015 ballot that the county will be doing. Now, when we came forward with our charter changes, we got sticker shock when Sarah told us that could be anywhere north of 600K to do that. As I understood her answer, and I'm not saying I'm fully correct on this, the reason of that is the number of parties involved in election split the election cost equally. It doesn't matter if you, as a city, only came forward with one question. If there's only 2 parties that have questions on the ballot, then we got to split that cost 50-50. As I understand, in November of 2015, and I might be wrong, but I heard this and haven't had a chance to verify it, there are school board elections in that election anyway. And so we're going to have multiple school boards already doing that cost. So there is a potential that the cost for us to put it on the November of 2015 election could be lower than the 330K. And pick a number, 200K or something like that. But there are opportunities, and even if it was the worst case of 330, given all the money we're talking about, I think that would be, in all the expenses we're already incurring, it would only be a little bit more in money well spent. But you go with Councilmember Martin's, we don't have to do that. We pay as you go.
Councilmember Martin.
You know, I just want to say, this is really a hard one for me, because I know and understand about all the possibility of fixing some of the things that have been presented with the skip bonds. But I've also said all along that I think 5 years of projects, at the end of those 5 years, we're right back where we are today, and yet we're still paying for 20 years. The option to use the funds that are available today just to pay for stormwater does not solve the infrastructure problem. But either does the skip bonds solve that problem. It's a very short-term fix. And I think with a mayoral election that's coming up, and I think all the candidates have talked about wanting to address this issue on a bigger level. I think this is an opportunity to do that. It's an opportunity to solve the stormwater problem, which, you know, I guess it's partly because we sit as the Board of Directors of Utilities that we understand the significance of this problem and the need to get it fixed. And if we want water running through the pipe that we've spent $1 billion putting in, we need to get this problem fixed. And this is the proposal, the resolution I'll be bringing forward tomorrow, is an option to do that on a pay-as-you-go basis. And then as the new mayor is elected, whoever that person might be, as Don mentioned, they've all committed to coming and working with us to find a bigger solution for the infrastructure problems that face our communities. So this is a hard one. I'll be the very first to admit that. And this is just bringing forward another option as we consider moving forward.
Okay, further comments? So I think we have 2 things we need to address here. Is there enough interest to go ahead and have the second option produced for the original proposal, and is there enough interest to go ahead and have Councilmember Martin's proposal come forward? So let's kind of take them in order. Is there interest in the option for the new proposal for stormwater to come forward for tomorrow? Is there, how many want to bring that forward? Okay, so there's enough for that, and is there enough interest for the one that was proposed by Councilmember Martin? Okay, so we will.
So just to clarify, we will produce an added item agenda for tomorrow, which adds the alternative proposed by Councilmember Martin for tomorrow's, because it is fairly significantly different than the one that is on the agenda. And just to clarify and make sure everybody's clear, the reason that we have some time constraints on the one that is on the current agenda is because of the deadlines to place it on the ballot. And even though the new one does not have that particular constraint, we still want to consider it tomorrow. Good. Okay, that answers my question.
Okay, Councilmember Bennett.
I guess the question I'd have received for you, sorry, is of the two options that are here, would the mayor be supportive of either of those options?
Yes, the
Okay.
two, and that's correct. And one point I didn't make that I wanted to make is there's a job component to this, and you don't borrow money to create jobs, but accomplishing this in our community will net about $450 jobs per year during that project timeline, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Further questions on that issue? So